Picture this. You saved up for months, maybe even years. You finally booked that dream cruise. You packed your bags, you drove to the port, you walked up that gangway with the biggest smile on your face, and you thought to yourself, this is going to be the best week of my life. And then, on day 2, you grab a plate at the buffet. You pile on some food that looks amazing, you sit down, you eat it, you do not think twice about it. And 12 hours later, you are curled up on the bathroom floor of your tiny cabin, shaking, sweating, throwing up into a bucket, while your family is out there on the pool deck having the time of their lives without you. Your dream vacation just turned into a nightmare. And the worst part is, you have absolutely no idea which food on that plate did this to you. That exact scenario happened to over 2,200 real people on cruise ships in 2025 alone. That is not a guess. That is not an exaggeration. That is the actual number reported by the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In 2025, the CDC recorded 23 separate outbreaks of gastrointestinal illness on cruise ships. 23. That shattered every record since they started keeping track back in 1994. More outbreaks than 2024. More than 2023. More than any year in the last 3 decades. And when researchers dug into the data, they found that the #1 cause of these outbreaks was norovirus, a bug so contagious that if one single person on your ship has it, it can spread through an entire deck faster than you can say all-you-can-eat buffet. But here is the part that nobody is talking about. Here is the part that changes everything. A huge percentage of those people did not catch norovirus from a dirty handrail or a contaminated elevator button. They caught it from what they ate. They picked up a plate. They chose the wrong dish. They reached for something that looked perfectly fine, but was quietly sitting in what food scientists call the danger zone, that invisible temperature range between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, where bacteria do not just survive, they throw a party. They double in number every 20 minutes. And by the time you take that first bite, there could be millions of them waiting for you. Now I want you to think about something. What if right next to that contaminated dish, just a few inches away on that same buffet line, there was a food that was completely safe? A food that tasted incredible and had almost zero chance of making you sick? What if you just did not know which one to reach for? That is exactly why this video exists, because today I am going to walk you through 11 specific cruise ship foods that are not only mouth-wateringly delicious, but also carry the lowest possible risk of food poisoning. These are foods that veteran cruisers who have been on 20, 30, even 50 voyages eat without hesitation. These are the foods that crew members choose for themselves when they sit down in the mess hall. These are the choices that food safety experts would approve of if they were standing right behind you in that buffet line. And by the time we get through all 11, you are going to understand exactly why these foods are safe, exactly what makes them different from the risky options, and exactly how to eat your way through an entire cruise without ever worrying about getting sick. You are going to board your next ship with a level of confidence that 99% of passengers simply do not have. So let us get into it. We are going to start with something that sounds so simple, you might almost laugh. But do not skip past this one, because it is one of the most important things on this entire list. I am talking about freshly baked bread. Every single day on a large cruise ship, the bakery team wakes up before the sun comes up and starts baking. They bake in the morning. They bake in the afternoon. And on many ships, they bake again in the evening. That means some cruise ships are producing fresh bread 3 separate times every single day. And the reason this matters for your stomach is pure science. When dough goes into a commercial cruise ship oven, it gets blasted with heat that exceeds 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Most cruise ship ovens run even hotter than that. At those temperatures, every single type of harmful bacteria you can think of is completely destroyed. Salmonella is gone. E. coli is gone. Norovirus cannot survive. Listeria is wiped out. By the time that bread comes out of the oven, it is one of the cleanest foods on the entire ship. Large cruise ships go through thousands and thousands of bread rolls every single week because the demand is so high that they literally cannot bake fast enough. And that constant turnover is actually a good thing for you because it means the bread on your plate is almost never more than a few hours old. Grab it from the basket at your dinner table. Pick it up from the bakery display near the buffet. Tear off a warm piece, spread some butter on it, and enjoy one of the simplest and safest pleasures available on a cruise ship. It is not fancy, it is not glamorous, but it is delicious and it is about as close to zero risk as food gets. Now, the second food on this list is one that separates smart cruisers from everyone else, and it all comes down to where you eat it. I am talking about grilled steak from the main dining room. Here is what most first-time cruisers do not understand. The main dining room and the buffet might both serve steak, but they are not the same thing, not even close. When you sit down in the main dining room and order a steak, that piece of meat is pulled from a refrigerator, placed on a screaming hot grill by a trained chef, cooked to the exact temperature you requested, and delivered to your table within minutes. The journey from cold storage to your plate is short, controlled, and precise. A steak cooked to medium reaches an internal temperature of about 145 degrees. Well done goes past 160. At those temperatures, every harmful organism that could possibly be living in that beef is destroyed on contact. Now compare that experience to walking up to a buffet tray where slices of beef have been sitting under a heat lamp for an unknown amount of time. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, maybe longer. Nobody standing in that buffet line knows the answer. And as that meat slowly cools down from its original cooking temperature, it drifts right into the danger zone where bacteria start multiplying at an alarming rate. That is why experienced cruisers almost always choose the dining room for their steak. It tastes better, it is cooked with more care, and it is dramatically, measurably safer for your stomach. The third food you need to try is something most people walk right past without a second thought, and that is a mistake. I am talking about soup. Hot, steaming, freshly ladled soup. Think about a gorgeous bowl of French onion soup with that thick layer of bubbly melted cheese stretching from one side of the bowl to the other. Or a creamy tomato bisque so rich and smooth it feels like velvet on your tongue. Or a hearty chicken and vegetable soup, loaded with tender chunks of real ingredients. The reason soup is a food safety champion on cruise ships comes down to one thing, and it is temperature. Soup stations on cruise ships keep their contents at sustained temperatures well above 140 degrees Fahrenheit for the entire duration of service. That is well above the danger zone. Bacteria simply cannot grow or multiply at those temperatures. It is too hot for them. And here is the extra advantage that soup has over almost every other food on the ship. Because soup is liquid, it holds its heat much more evenly and for much longer than solid foods. A piece of chicken on a buffet will start cooling on its surface within minutes. But soup stays consistently hot from the top of the bowl all the way to the bottom. Experienced cruisers know this secret. They know that soup is basically a bowl of delicious safety. Royal Caribbean cruisers in particular have turned French onion soup into almost a cult following, with some passengers ordering it every single night of their voyage, because it is that good. Number 4 is a food that both kids and adults go absolutely crazy for, and it is made right in front of your eyes. Custom stir fry. You will find these live cooking stations on almost every major cruise ship sailing today. Royal Caribbean calls theirs the Mongolian wok or Mongolian grill on some of their ships. Other cruise lines have similar setups with different names, but the experience is the same everywhere. You walk up to the station. You pick your own raw vegetables from a fresh display. You choose your protein, chicken, beef, shrimp, tofu, whatever you like. You select a sauce and pick noodles or rice. Then, you hand your bowl to a chef who dumps everything onto a blazing hot wok or cooking surface that is running at well over 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You stand there and watch as everything sizzles and pops and transforms from a pile of raw ingredients into a fully cooked, piping hot, incredibly flavorful meal in less than 2 minutes. There is absolutely no question about whether this food is fresh. You saw it happen. There is absolutely no question about whether it was cooked properly. You heard it sizzle. And there is no way bacteria could survive the kind of heat that just blasted through your meal. This is one of the smartest choices you can make on a cruise ship, and honestly, it is also one of the most fun. Standing there watching a skilled chef toss your food in a wok while flames dance around the edges is a dining experience you simply cannot get at home. Number 5 is something cruise ships have quietly turned into an art form over the last few years. Pizza. But I need you to pay very close attention here because not all cruise ship pizza is created equal. The pizza you want is the fresh pizza. The pizza that is pulled straight out of a roaring hot oven and handed to you with the cheese still bubbling and steam still rising off the top. Many modern cruise ships now have dedicated pizzerias that operate almost like a real Italian pizza shop. Royal Caribbean actually brought in a master pizza expert to completely redesign their pizza recipes, and it shows. These pizzerias bake in small batches continuously throughout the day, which means you are almost always getting a slice that was made minutes ago, not hours ago. The oven temperatures in these dedicated pizza stations run between 400 and 700 degrees Fahrenheit depending on the style. At those temperatures, the dough, the sauce, the cheese, every single ingredient gets hit with heat levels that obliterate bacteria instantly. Now here is the important part. The pizza you want to avoid is the pizza that has been sitting on a buffet counter under a heat lamp for who knows how long. That pizza is slowly drying out, slowly getting tough, and most importantly, slowly cooling down into temperature ranges where bacteria can start to grow. So when you are craving pizza on your cruise, walk past the buffet version and find the dedicated pizzeria. Grab a slice where you can see it coming fresh out of the oven. That slice is not just tastier, it is significantly safer. Number 6 is going to make every breakfast lover on this ship jump out of bed with excitement. Made-to-order omelets. Almost every cruise ship in the world has an omelet station at breakfast where a real chef stands behind a hot griddle and makes your omelet from scratch right in front of you. You tell them what you want inside. Cheese, peppers, mushrooms, ham, onions, whatever combination makes you happy. They crack fresh eggs, pour them onto a cooking surface that is running at well over 300 degrees, fold in your fillings, and slide a perfectly cooked omelet onto your plate in under 3 minutes. Now compare that to the alternative. Those giant metal trays of scrambled eggs sitting on the buffet, the ones that look a little watery on one side and a little rubbery on the other. Those eggs were often made from a liquid egg mix, cooked in huge batches, and then transferred to the buffet where they sit and slowly cool down while hundreds of passengers walk past. Salmonella is the bacteria everyone worries about with eggs, and for good reason. It is commonly found in raw and undercooked eggs. But a made-to-order omelet on a hot griddle eliminates that risk almost entirely because the cooking temperature far exceeds what is needed to kill salmonella. Fresh eggs, high heat, fast cooking, immediate service. That is the recipe for the safest breakfast on the ship. The 7th food on this list might be the single most popular thing that any cruise passenger eats during their entire voyage. Poolside grilled burgers. Carnival Cruise Line has turned this into a legend with Guy Fieri's burger joint, where passengers line up around the deck for juicy, freshly grilled burgers that have developed an almost fanatical following among loyal Carnival cruisers. Other lines, like Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and Misk all have their own poolside grill concepts. And the reason these burgers are so safe comes down to the same principle we keep seeing over and over. They are cooked to order on a ripping hot grill and served to you immediately. With ground beef, cooking temperature is especially important because, unlike a whole steak where bacteria mostly live on the outer surface, ground beef has been mixed and compressed, which means bacteria can be present throughout the entire patty from the outside all the way to the center. That is why ground beef needs to hit an internal temperature of at least 160 degrees to be considered safe. And that is exactly what these poolside grills deliver. Every single patty gets cooked all the way through on a grill that is running hot enough to leave those beautiful sear marks on the surface. You grab your burger, load it up with fresh toppings from the fixings bar, find a lounge chair by the pool, and enjoy one of the most satisfying and safest meals available anywhere on the ship. Sunshine, ocean breeze, and a perfectly grilled burger. That is cruise life at its absolute best. Number 8 is a food that sounds fancy, but is actually available for free to every single passenger on the ship. Freshly prepared pasta from the main dining room or from one of the ship's Italian restaurants. Here is why pasta is one of the safest things you can eat at sea. The cooking process involves not one, but 2 separate stages that both use extreme heat. First, the pasta itself is dropped into a pot of water that is boiling at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Any bacteria that might have been present on the raw pasta is completely destroyed during this process. Then the sauce, whether it is a rich bolognese, a classic marinara, a creamy Alfredo, or anything else, has been simmering on a stove at sustained high temperatures for an extended period. When these 2 components come together on your plate, you are eating a meal that has essentially been double sterilized by heat. Spaghetti bolognese on Royal Caribbean is one of those comfort food dishes that cruisers order again and again because the sauce is consistently flavorful and satisfying. The important thing to remember with pasta is the same rule that applies to everything on this list. Order it fresh from a restaurant kitchen where it is made to order. Do not scoop it from a buffet tray where the noodles have been sitting and clumping together for an unknown period of time, slowly losing heat and slowly entering temperature ranges where bacteria can start to do their thing. Number 9 is a food that people discover by accident on their first cruise and then cannot stop eating for the rest of the trip. Freshly made crepes. If your cruise ship has a crepe station, and more modern ships do, you absolutely need to experience this. Royal Caribbean's Aquadome Market on their newer ships like Icon of the Seas and Utopia of the Seas has a crepe station that consistently draws the longest lines of any food spot on the entire vessel, and there is a very good reason for that. The crepe maker is a large, flat, circular cooking surface that runs at extremely high temperatures. The chef pours a thin layer of batter onto this surface, and it starts cooking immediately. In about 60 seconds, the crepe is done. You watch the entire process happen right in front of your eyes. There is zero guesswork about freshness because the crepe literally did not exist 60 seconds ago. Then the chef fills it with whatever you choose. Nutella and sliced bananas for something sweet, ham and melted cheese for something savory, fresh berries and whipped cream if you are feeling indulgent. The point is that this food was created from raw batter to finished meal in about 90 seconds total, all on a scorching hot surface that bacteria cannot possibly survive on. It is a show. It is a snack. It is a meal. And it is one of the safest things you will put in your mouth during your entire cruise. Number 10 is hiding in plain sight at every single meal on every single cruise ship in the world, and almost nobody thinks about how genius this choice really is. Peelable fruit. Bananas, oranges, tangerines, mandarins, grapefruits, even kiwis if you have a spoon. Here is what makes peelable fruit such a brilliant food safety move. The thick outer skin of the fruit acts as a completely natural, completely sealed, completely protective barrier between the outside world and the food you are about to eat. Think about what happens at a cruise ship buffet. Thousands of people walk through every day. They touch serving spoons, they reach over plates, they cough, they sneeze, they touch their faces, and then touch the next item in line. It is not a clean environment no matter how hard the cruise line tries. But when you pick up a banana, it does not matter who touched it before you because you are peeling off and throwing away the entire outer layer. The fruit inside has never been exposed to the air, never been touched by another person, never been sitting on a buffet tray. It is sealed inside nature's own packaging, as clean and fresh as the moment it was picked. This is actually the exact same advice that the CDC gives to travelers visiting countries where water quality is uncertain. Eat fruits you can peel yourself. It is such a simple strategy, but it is incredibly powerful. You get your vitamins, you get natural energy, you get a healthy snack between meals, And you get total peace of mind that what you are eating is completely uncontaminated. And finally, number 11 is a food that I believe every cruiser should experience at least once during their voyage. And when prepared correctly, it is one of the safest and most memorable meals you will ever have at sea. Freshly grilled seafood from a sit-down restaurant. Now, I know some of you are immediately thinking, wait, is seafood not one of the riskiest things on a cruise ship? And you are partially right. Raw seafood can absolutely be risky. Sushi, raw oysters, ceviche, beef tartare, carpaccio, all of these carry an elevated risk of foodborne illness no matter where you eat them. And on a cruise ship where you do not know exactly when the fish was caught or how long it has been stored, that risk goes up even more. But here is the critical difference. Grilled seafood is a completely different animal. When a fresh piece of salmon hits a hot grill and is cooked to an internal temperature of 145 degrees or higher, every harmful bacteria, every parasite, every virus that might have been present in that fish is destroyed completely. The same goes for a beautiful lobster tail, a thick piece of swordfish, a perfectly charred piece of mahi-mahi, or a tender fillet of sea bass. High heat transforms seafood from a potential risk into one of the safest and most nutritious proteins you can eat. And because you are ordering this from a sit-down restaurant where a trained chef is preparing each dish individually and cooking it to proper temperatures, you are getting the freshest and most carefully handled version of that food. Some of the greatest meals ever served on cruise ships have been grilled seafood dishes. Cruisers who have been on dozens of voyages will tell you that a perfectly grilled piece of fish in the main dining room, served with some steamed vegetables and a squeeze of lemon, is one of those simple pleasures that makes the entire trip worthwhile. Now, here's what I want you to take away from everything we just covered. Look back at all 11 of those foods, and you will notice a very clear pattern. Every single one shares the same core principles. They are either cooked at extremely high temperatures that destroy harmful bacteria, or they have a natural protective barrier like the peel on a piece of fruit. They are served fresh, either made to order or produced in small batches with high turnover. And most of them involve you watching the cooking process happen right in front of you, which eliminates any guesswork about how long the food has been out or whether it was cooked properly. That is the golden rule of eating safely on a cruise ship. Fresh and hot means safe. Cooked in front of you means even safer. Sitting on a buffet for an unknown amount of time, slowly cooling down while thousands of people walk past it, that is where the risk lives. That is where the danger zone does its damage. And that is exactly how most of those 2,200 plus people got sick on cruise ships last year. The CDC has already reported at least one new outbreak in early February of 2026 on a Regent Seven Seas ship, with 21 passengers and 6 crew members falling ill. These outbreaks are not slowing down. With approximately 20 million passengers expected to embark from North American ports this year, the sheer volume of people cruising means the risk of illness is always present. But here is the beautiful thing. You are no longer one of the passengers who does not know what to look for. You are no longer the person who blindly grabs whatever looks good and hopes for the best. You now understand the science. You know that heat kills bacteria. You know that freshness matters. You know that made to order is always safer than sitting on a tray. And you know exactly which 11 foods to reach for when you are standing in that buffet line or sitting down in that dining room. That knowledge is worth more than any cabin upgrade or any shore excursion you could book. Because the best cruise in the world means nothing if you spend half of it sick in your cabin. Share this with everyone you know who has a cruise coming up. Send it to your parents, your friends, your travel group, anyone who is about to step onto a ship. It might just save their vacation. And the next time you are on a cruise, standing at that buffet with a plate in your hand, remember these 11 foods. Choose fresh, choose hot, choose smart, and enjoy every single incredible bite of your voyage.